I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hey everybody, it's Wednesday night at 10 o'clock, so you know it's time for the Vikings after show.
Yep.
Episode 9, Resurrection. I'm here with my lovely and talented co-host, Lauren. What up, Lauren?
Hey, y'all. We are back. Another Wednesday.
Another one, and an interesting episode. A lot going on. Your first impressions.
There are a lot of stories, a lot of fibs being told.
Okay, a lot of lies being told.
A lot of lies. That's all I can say.
Okay.
So.
All right, we're going to approach this the way we typically do. We're going to go to each location. We're going to start off with Norway, then Rus, then Iceland, which is back in the mix now, and Kattegat. But what seems to be a through line, too, is this threat of war. And everybody's assembling their armies, right?
Yep.
So I feel like it's kind of gearing up. All right, so anyway, let's jump right into it. All right. We're starting with Norway. King Harald is approached by Eric, who is Bjorn's kind of emissary.
Right.
And we know that Eric has had this shady background. He just kind of appeared out of nowhere when he saved Bjorn. And while he's told Bjorn about his past, King Harald brings up, more details about his murderous past as Skagamore.
Yeah. I wasn't really shocked about hearing the things coming out of Harold's mouth and him actually having an understanding of who Eric is. It just didn't shock me in that sense. We knew that he was a little grimy and we knew that he was an outlaw.
Right.
So it kind of felt like King Harold just needed to have that prideful, egotistical type of moment to have a one-up. And that's him, being him. But at the end of the day, I think Eric is a person who is looking for reform and change and trying to turn his life around. And at least at this point, at this present moment.
And he has a little salty moment later on, but I don't want to get to that later. We know what we're talking about with Gunhill. But yeah, so he calls him out. I didn't know his past was this dark, even though he told Bjorn, yes, he had kind of like this murderous past. But yeah, he apparently, he had been banished, and he came back, and it was basically Harold's way of kind of breaking him down. Like, I know exactly who you are, right? And I think we both can agree that it was King Harold's ego that originally led him to want to basically like to kill this guy.
Right.
But obviously, Olaf intervenes, ever the philosopher, telling him you should hear him out.
Yeah.
And basically, what's implicit is, is about the coming of the Russian army. That's the big thing that's coming, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Olaf was so kind to remind him, you saved me for a special day, for when I might be wise, so I'm going to be wise today. And that's something that you and we talked about last week. We talked about the week before. And he does have these moments of like really, really good gems, especially when it comes down to dealing with King Harold. King Harold, in my humble opinion, he acts very childish at times. And this moment is a very childish moment where he's being a boy instead of a king.
Right. He's going to cut off his nose to spite his face just because of his ego, instead of taking this alliance with Bjorn. Because his first instinct is, Bjorn, alliance, he's under me. He's my vassal.
He's weaker.
Yeah. So, but he in the end, he agrees to do this, this truce with Bjorn because they kind of want to unite Norway, for this coming attack. There's no way the Russians have a very formidable army. So at least both of them realize that. But he makes this one contingent. He says that Bjorn must bring his armies from Kattegat and come defend their capital in Norway.
Right.
So that's an interesting request.
I mean, in a way, yes, it's interesting, but in a way, that's just him trying to cover his own butt.
Right.
At the end of the day, he wants to make sure his house is protected.
Right.
And he calls all the people to come essentially be a part of the army to protect his own. He's not, and this is what really frustrates me with King Harold and always has. Like I said, he acts like a boy. And here's a moment where if you're a king, you should care about your people. And he just does not care about his people. When he was elected, in these moments after him being elected, when he killed his brother, like he has this habitual habit of just caring about himself, and it makes me so frustrated.
Right. And one of the things, the difference between like a Ragnar, when we felt like he was destined and really kind of chosen by the gods, like a higher calling. When Harold talks about him always being fated to be king. It's more from like an egotistical standpoint,
right?
A selfish standpoint.
And he has this childish, make believe, imaginary like playing in his head of being a king, like how kids play, like you know when kids are running around playing like they're kings or they're firefighters or whatever, they're in make believe land. That's how I look at King Harold, and somehow he just happened to been on this journey and course where things fell into his lap and it worked out for him, or he made it work out for him.
Right.
So.
Right. Okay. Well, enough with King Harold. We're done with King Harold. We're done with Norway.
Yep.
We're gonna move on to Rus. We're gonna move on to Russia. So we find, well, first of all, we've already seen Ivar a little bit, and we're going to get to that. He's kind of led this other side mission, over in Kattegat. But right now we're going to cut to where he and Hvitserk have reunited, and he's come to basically introduce his new reunited brother Hvitserk to Oleg and the princess. And immediately, I don't want to say it's awkward, but I thought that he was kind of embraced a little too, a little too open, a little too quickly, even though it makes sense to have another son of Ragnar coming on your side. But what does your think about how he was embraced by King Oleg?
Well, this is my thing. I think King Oleg just wants power. And everybody knows the Ragnar name, the Ragnar
sons of Ragnar, yeah.
That
carries a lot of weight.
It carries a lot of weight. So for him to have to invade their territory that is more of their territory than it is his, I think that just gives him a leg up. So I think that he's accepting them, but I also think he's kind of ready to watch his back a little bit.
I think he better watch his back, because it's not only is he bringing in another, I guess, quote, ally, of Viking descent, but another ally of Ivar. That was my whole thing. It's like,
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if he needs to watch his back, because Ivar's collected allies. He's got Igor. Now he's got his brother Hvitserk there.
He's growing.
Yeah. So,
but I think that's why he was like, you know what, y'all come by and y'all just watch this show tonight. And I think that was a power move.
There you
a
go.
Tactic to scare them into place.
Very good. So he's like, yes. So for the audience, very good point. Old Prince Oleg is, once he's introduced to Hvitserk, he's like, great, I'm glad you guys are here. We are assembling our armies, and I want you guys to be here for this ceremony. It's a great display of force.
Right.
And we're going to talk about that in just a second. But I guess I want to just kind of nail down a little bit about when they're walking to the ceremony. Ivar gets approached by one of Prince Dior's messengers.
Yes.
Remember that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was real subtle. He kind of articulates the same thing that he did last time, that, he hasn't forgot. We want to overthrow Oleg and rescue Igor.
Right.
So it was very I guess it was very brief. And I feel like it's not new information, but I guess it's good to keep checking in with him and know that the plan's still on deck.
Right. That's exactly what that moment was. It was a quick little check-in. And I think he has to check in because he knows his brother so well. Like, his brother has this way of being super cunning and manipulative and getting folks on his side. So I think he just wants to make sure Ivar is still
smart to check in. Even with Ivar, because Ivar can be pretty slippery too. So
right.
Definitely. All right. So and then that whole scene in Russia climaxes with this big display of force, and we get a chance to see these huge, formidable armies. And so before we get out of Russia, I guess the point is to know is that, like, they ain't playing around. No. I mean, this is not no like Viking raider tribe. This is like a huge nation, a huge Christian nation with a lot of force.
Yeah, when I saw these armies, or the army assembled, at the end of the day, I kind of was reminded of that moment where all the armies assembled a couple seasons, well, maybe a season and a half back, when they all had to come together and defend that time. So it was one of those moments where, like, whoa, when it was supposed to be the Great Army. This, in my opinion, is even larger than the Great Army. And that, for me, has me shaking in my boots, because I don't want him to have this much power.
and it's the stakes are high, and already I'm already anticipating if Bjorn has to leave Kattegat. Does that mean Kattegat's going to get taken hostage? I don't want to see Kattegat go down.
Yep.
So a lot to look forward to in the coming wars.
Well, I'm hoping, since King Oleg already had said, look, King Harold has something coming for him. I'm hoping that he's just going to go straight to King Harold because we need to keep cat to cat.
Yeah, and guess what? As you pointed out, ladies and gentlemen, Oleg isn't messing around. He not only wants to take over Norway, but he wants to end the pagan rule and get rid of all the pagan gods.
Yeah.
So I didn't know he was holding that tight to his Christianity, but I guess apparently he is. So
it's so interesting to me because, by title, he's taking on Christianity, but by behavior and nature, he seems to still have a lot of his pagan ways.
Yeah.
So for him to have like this war that's also sent at the center of the vengeance for taking back, his religion and making his religion stronger in the world, it doesn't seem as befitting for his character because his character doesn't seem to do anything traditional along the lines of Christianity at all.
You know what it is? It's like the typical dictator, or even if we had a war-hungry president who kind of like wrapped themselves in the flag. We know it's all about ego and power and control.
True, very true.
Yeah. All right, so let's put a pin in Russia, and we're going to go to Iceland. Iceland's back in the mix.
Yes.
So, first of all, the way they open the episode is very interesting. They show this ceremony. You're not sure where they are, and it's blood, and it's wedding. Well, I mean, I don't want to say it. Not a wedding yet. It's blood, it's ceremony, and then they jump from the exterior to an interior, and then we see Ubbe, and we realize we're in Iceland. After all this pageantry is going on outside, and you see him, he's sitting in there with Kettle Flatnose, and they get a visit from a stranger.
Yeah.
Okay, so they totally trolled us, like the stranger coming up, you can't see who it is. Everybody was hoping it was going to be Floki, right?
Yes.
So, and it turns out to be this wanderer, and whose name is Oter, and apparently Flatnose, Kettle Flatnose, has a past with this guy, and he had been telling Ubbe about him. I feel like I'm explaining too much, but with that said, I don't know. What do you think about their relationship? This relationship that Flatnose and Oter have.
I think Flatnose has way more power than he's letting on. When he ended up in Kattegat and trying to, play this whole, like, I'm hopeless, I need help type of thing. I want to bring more people back. I think Kettle Flatnose, we're going to see this, evolve, that he is very, very powerful there, and he is the puppet master that is really pulling a lot of strings. And I feel like he has something on Oter. I don't know what it is, but he has something, because for him to lean over and say, oh, he doesn't need to know everything, talking about Ubbe, it's just strange to me that someone that's supposed to be humble and someone that's supposed to be within the pack, he keeps hiding and changing and shifting stories and doing things in a way that we just don't know. What are you up to?
Yeah, he's always kind of hiding his hand in his agenda. And along those lines, I felt like, wow, I think he expects this kind of implicit loyalty from the wanderer, from Oter. Oter kind of like pulls Ubbe to the side and concedes that he actually did know Floki. So that kind of surprised me when he busts out with the ring.
Yeah, but I feel like Oter has his own alternative motives as well. Like at the end of the day, Oter as a wanderer, I believe that he's out for himself, which I don't think he was lying originally when he came up with this whole fancy name of Athelstan and all this extra stuff and telling a story to really be on Kettle Flatnose's side, but rather to protect his own butt. And I'm not quite sure what that is, but I feel like there's a level to him that he is after his own power. He's talking about this golden land and all this extra stuff, and I don't know what the deal is with that ring, but Floki did not just give him.
Wait, I know. Wait, I hope he didn't. I don't want to think that Floki's dead, but you're right. I don't remember Floki giving the thing. Do you guys remember Floki giving? Do you remember this guy, Oter the Wanderer?
Floki taking
Let
off
us
his
know in the
clothes
comments.
and leaving nude and giving a ring?
Yeah.
Like, this is so absurd. This is so
The last time I remember seeing Floki, maybe he would take it off his jacket and he's in some cave with some, I don't know, spiritual.
Now,
whatever.
I do believe that he did lose faith in humanity.
Right.
However, if I remember correctly, Floki was going off to become to rekindle that faith, but also to have a stronger vision with the gods, because he felt like he had fallen off.
Right.
And
that's what I was referring to when he was kind of communing with the gods in the cave. Is that what it was?
I think
this is like these weird machinations. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna get more into this wanderer character. So yeah, he does two things. He comes back with the promises of this golden land, and Ubbe is immediately, kind of taken in by this. Okay, great. This is something else for us to be able to claim and conquer. And that kind of gives him a little feather in his cap too, if he's able to kind of make this expansion from Iceland to some other land. But Torvi is pregnant this whole time, and the pregnancy is complicated.
Yeah, I'm under the impression that the baby was breached, and at this point in time, we're thinking that she's gonna die, because there's no such thing as like a C-section.
There's no coming back from a C-section
like,
in Viking. When they pull out the knife,
cut the baby open. You cut the stomach open. You just cut the stomach open.
Yeah, you can't stitch it back up, right?
Yeah, and you see everyone's face go to this place, and no one really knows what's going to happen. And then our wanderer just comes in, and he starts praying. And come to find out, he's praying to God, not the gods. And
which I didn't even catch. Did you catch that? Did anybody catch that in the audience?
So I know that when he was speaking, it was of a different dialect. So I'm assuming that it was Latin or of something of that nature, because they didn't. Well, we didn't have our title up or anything of that. So, but it didn't sound familiar. I personally didn't think it was I didn't think it was the language from when they were in England. I don't recall that.
Okay.
But however, Ubbe was like, I know these prayers and I know this. So I assume with Ubbe saying that, he knows these prayers and we're listening to it in a different language, perhaps this was one of the languages spoke when they were in England.
Okay.
So.
And I'm curious if you guys in the comment section caught that as well. And by the way, we're going to get to all your comments from last week. So, that and a little bit of news, a little bit of predictions as always, and some nice new awards coming up.
Yeah.
So all right. So with that said, let's get basically Orter, he endears himself in another way with this prayer. The prayer apparently seems to work.
Yeah.
And
which is interesting.
It's very interesting. It's interesting because things were looking really like bleak at that point, like you said. And then Ubbe, all of a sudden, thank you for healing my wife, but it sounded like you were playing to a Christian guy.
So I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. You and I kind of immediately, the light of hypocrisy went off in my head, in both of our heads, because remember Ubbe's past.
Right. And Toby so nicely called him out,
Put him on blast.
And she had a serious wife moment, like, hold on. You were baptized.
You were baptized Christian.
And don't you remember when you were praying to those gods too?
Yeah.
I actually kind of like how she was just so, like, her candor for it. It was just like, no. She didn't care who was in the room. Yeah. She didn't care about anything. And I don't know if that's because she has this hunger and this desire to go to the Golden Land as well. But because normally she takes her husband's side.
But I think it's also too because she's so grateful that she thinks he saved her baby.
True.
So she's just like, don't give this guy no slack.
Yeah, true.
Yes. All right. So she kind of throws that up in his face, and we're kind of happy to see that. But at that point, when Ubbe is grilling him about, why are you saying this prayer? It sounded like a Christian prayer. Okay. And Torvi kind of rectifies things. Well, you did the same thing, and she pulls out the cross.
Right.
And I guess she hands it to her. They give it to new Aethelstan, right?
Yeah.
To the Wanderer.
And then he passes on. Yeah.
Okay. So, but here's the thing. So yeah, while Ubbe is grilling him, he comes clean and he says that, okay, my name isn't Orter. I came across the real Orter, and I took his identity. Now, in the flashback, we see him killing, but he didn't say that, I don't think, when he's talking.
Of course not. Because then Ubbe would have been back to, I want to hang you, kill you, slash you open tomorrow. Like he
left that part out about he killed the original Orter.
And that's why I say I don't know what his alternative motives are, but he's definitely up to something as well, because here he is. I mean, they don't claim him as a quote unquote outlaw, but he's running around murdering people too. Like it's just. he's up to no good, and somehow him and Kettle Flat knows they are partners with a mission for their own alternatives. Somehow they're aligned, but not aligned.
Okay. So they have temporary alliance.
Yeah.
Okay, you're asking about the title, Resurrection. I think this is another key. Because this character who's taken on Oter's identity, he claims to be, his name is Aethelstan, and I feel like, okay, that's more an homage to the original Aethelstan. You know, we saw, the priest who came, from England with Ragnar and spent all this time there. So I think the show is playing this interesting thing with not just resurrection, but like reincarnation. And along with the Freyas thing, we'll get to that too. Anyway.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah. So it's this interesting theme of resurrection. And I guess before we totally get out of... I think that's it for Iceland. Yeah. All right. So before we totally get out of Iceland, let's just, let's kind of set the table for what's next for them. I'm worried for Ubbe and his safety, though, because we all know that Flat Nose is so scandalous.
Yeah. When they first arrived, that was one of the very first thoughts I had when we saw them arrive at the village last episode. But I feel like because Ubbe isn't worried, I feel like he doesn't plan on staying there long. I feel like we're going to see him leave either maybe the next episode, probably the tail end of the next episode. We'll probably see them leave for the Golden Land. Okay. And yeah. All right. I don't think this is going to be too much of an issue.
Okay. All right. So let's put a pin in Iceland and let's finally get to Kattegat.
Yes.
Where it's all happening, and we figure out that they had actually teased us. I don't know if you remember in the very beginning, we saw this blood ceremony, and this maiden in the white makeup, and there's blood dripping in the seas, and people come and eat in the seas, and then they tricked us because they cut to Norway, but that's actually the wedding at Kattegat for Bjorn.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? We cut to Bjorn about to get married, already making out with his new wife, Ingrid, in front of Gunhild.
To each their own.
Look on your face. Okay, but here's the salty thing I was talking about. Eric, to me, steps way out of his lane though when he's like when he sees that, he's like, "Yo, that doesn't make you jealous?" I mean, how would that make you feel as a woman? And his intentions.
Well, I think his intentions were just awful. His intentions were to stir the pot, and I couldn't be more proud of Gunhild. Gunhild really checked him and put him in his place in a nice, nasty kind of way.
Like, you don't know me like that, fool.
Yeah, a nice, nasty kind of way. And, it's sad that... my fave, Lagatha, is no longer with us, but Gunhild is now taking that role in my heart because here's another feisty woman that, regardless of whether it's right, wrong, and different, inside the box, outside the box, she owns whatever that is, and she doesn't let anyone else manipulate her thoughts or views or stir the pot. We saw last episode, her taking on the crowd when they had nothing to say about Bjorn and He's Your King. She took that stand and she made that known, and she's one of those characters that knows how to own her space, and I love that. So yes.
Okay. So they're having this big wedding ceremony, and along with owning it, this is one of the things problems I've had with Bjorn, and she continues to kind of call him out on it, is the fact that when they're laying in bed, it's actually, they cut from the ceremony and they're laying in bed. And she says, this is actually the night he's supposed to be marrying Gunhild. So I guess this is that day or that night. Yeah. So she's like, you need to go and be with your bride. But he apologizes to her. He's like, I'm sorry, I've been disloyal. But one of the things, again, that we both like about Gunhild is, again, she's like, yo, you got to own this. You made this decision. You stuck it. You got to own it. And it kind of goes back to the whole thing of my thing of as far as waffling back and forth. It's almost weaker to do that than to own something you did and stand by it.
Right. We definitely know that this decision is a very tough decision for Gunhild to make. And we see her have this moment with the golden tear that runs down her face, where we know for certain that she's human, she feels, she's not just, she has this moment where she recognizes that the decision that she made is a tough one. Right. However.
Okay.
She made this decision and she wants Bjorn to own it, and she's pushing him. And I personally think that she should not. I think she's pushing him in a direction where it didn't necessarily have to go. I think she started something that didn't necessarily need to happen.
Right.
We know that his father Ragnar, he was scandalous in so many different ways when it came down to being faithful to his wives. And even at this moment, Bjorn is like, well, I wasn't sure what I wanted. And I feel like in this moment, because we see her with the tear after that, that maybe she just realized that maybe that was something that would have dissolved itself. And I feel like Bjorn is still questioning whether or not he should be marrying this other lady.
Yeah, it kind of, and here's one of the tragic thing about Gunhild's character. I like that she's strong, but it's almost like to her own detriment, because she's always needing to project strength. And she's always even kind of done that. Even when before her and Bjorn got married, she was, and this gets brought up later on, where she was kind of like, she wasn't leading Harold on, but King Harold was wooing her. And she didn't basically shoot him down. And when Bjorn was originally asking, like, what's going on with him, she didn't deny it. So basically she was kind of like playing all her options.
Right.
And I guess what I'm saying is that I think because she finally fell in love with Bjorn, and I didn't really see that till I guess she kind of stood up for him in front of that big speech and felt really that sense of loyalty to him. I wish she would get more in touch with that vulnerable side of her.
Yeah, she's not always vulnerable. This character hides her feelings a lot. And I feel like that's because, she talks about the gods, and she talks about the story that she was sharing with Ingrid, and I think that's the part of the woman where she feels like prophecy, vision, and she's more concerned about the strategic plan and living in that moment than getting caught up in the little teeny tiny stuff like, the relationship,
my
and this
petty
and
jealous
that.
needs.
Jealousy and petty stuff that doesn't need attention, which in a way it doesn't need attention, but it also does need recognition. Like, it needs you to own it, dissolve
you need to acknowledge it.
Yeah, that's one of those
Anybody
things.
would be hurt.
She's just unbalanced in that area, and it's more harm than good at this point.
Well, let's unpack that whole story she was talking to Ingrid about. So before Ingrid takes Bjorn's hand, she relays the story. She's like, do you know the story of Freya, who's a Norse god? And she's like, yes, she is the goddess of fertility. And she's like, well, you really don't know part of the story. And it kind of ties into the tear thing. That was foreshadowed because she says, Freya, I guess being the god of fertility, she had this very valuable necklace, and apparently she got the necklace from having sex with all the dwarves. That was part of the story.
Right.
So, but, hey, she's the god of fertility, so hey. and then Gunhild goes on to relate about how that Loki, and these are funny. These are all characters here in Thor. If you're a Marvel fan, but that's how I know this. But how Loki was always questioning why she had sex with everyone around him, but yet when he was gone, she shed golden tears. So it was very funny because I almost thought she was referring to when she was telling Ingrid about the legend of Freya, that maybe all that glitters isn't gold. I thought she was almost kind of giving Ingrid a hint that, hey, you could be doing all this, but you may be taking my husband, but your life is going to be filled with misery. Anyway, but I guess it came to be more referring to herself.
Maybe. I mean, I didn't give this moment too much thought. When I saw this moment, it was really weird because on one hand, I felt like she was kind of being a little like matronly and like welcoming her in, and then on the other end she kind of felt like a head cheerleader and being a little backstabbing. And I really can't figure. I feel like that's one of those things with Gunhild. She's making a decision, but it's not a decision that she wants to make. And with this situation, I think she's just letting her know, like, I'm still the head bee in charge.
Okay.
That's what I took away.
That's what you took away from it.
Like,
okay.
She is trying to have like a little welcome conversation, but at the same time, she's asserting her power.
Right.
And it was weird to watch because I'm not sure, like I said, if she's going to be more like a sister or more like a...
Well, I definitely got that impression too, that Gunhild was asserting her power because Ingrid had to go up to her, and Gunhill's the one who's like sitting up, like in the throne.
Yeah.
So definitely. All right. So before we get out of Kattegat and before we get to our quick news segments and our predictions, there's a raid in Kattegat. And I wasn't sure who was out there first. Where's this raid happening? Is it Norway? But it turns out that Eric is the one who, I guess he's with this party of Norsemen from Kattegat. He sees, these traces of these what turns out to be the Russians.
Right.
He attacks, but it turns out to be a trick, and they're ambushed.
Yeah. And funny enough, when that happened, I thought of Ivar. But then I was like, no, he can't be.
Really?
I did, because that's his tactic. Like,
that is his tactic.
He always lures people in, and then it's like, ha, got you.
Right.
So I thought about it for a split, like half a second. And then I was like, let that go. And I was just like, whatever. And then
it turns out to be, it is Ivar.
Ivar.
Yeah. So, and later on in the episode, the camera, pulls back from the raiding party, and it reveals like a blonde guy. You see this blonde hair, and then you see Ivar kind of turning, looking at the blonde, and this raiding party in the foreground. And then so not only is it revealed that it's Ivar he started the raids, but he's also reconnected with Hvitserk.
Yes.
So okay, so before we end things, let's talk about his relationship with Hvitserk. They have this weird kind of reunion, but I think both of them are in vulnerable positions where they're actually happy to see each other, or at least Ivar, I think, is surprisingly happy to see Hvitserk.
Yeah, that was shocking. I definitely didn't think Ivar would have been excited to see him, regardless of the circumstances.
Right. Because he killed his wife, by the way.
Right.
Right.
And it's just one of those moments where I'm like, okay, Ivar still understands that he needs help.
He needs help.
So that's kind of that, and I just accept it for what it is.
I think there's also something to the fact that Ivar's been humbled. While he hasn't been a prisoner, he hasn't been at the top of the heap. He's been kind of like, in the beginning, he was kind of like this half prisoner, half guest. So I think he's probably happy to see somebody he knows and he loves, because he's away from his family on the other side of the earth, apparently.
Yeah. And perhaps all this time in Russia, like we said before, him kind of seeing this mirror effect through this king. Maybe he, like you said, has had a change of heart.
Okay, he's getting a good look at himself. That's what it is.
Yeah.
He's looking in the mirror and he's looking at himself. Very good. So maybe Ivar has some redemption. He's starting to value family a little bit more.
Right.
Okay.
But Hvitserk, I expected him to go ham. Like, they're two guys sitting, like, there wasn't a log present, but they're like two guys sitting on a log having like a conversation. And at that point, I'm like, you just killed Lagatha because you thought it was Ivar. And now you are just over it? Like, you don't have anything to say?
And the funny thing is, ironically, I mean, maybe Hvitserk is crazy like a fox, because obviously he doesn't let Ivar know that I wanted to kill you and you've been tormenting me.
Right.
He says, he kind of twists it in the sense that, like, yeah, I finally got, revenge on that bee that killed our mom.
Yeah.
So he kind of twists it like that.
Yeah, that's another moment where, like we saw last episode, where he was, on the stake and about to, die, where he was owning it, and we just saw this crossover, a change in behavior, more of what I would consider an evil side to him, and he's just being that person now. Like, it's like he's a little mini Ivar, and I'm like, you were the baby. You were the lovable one.
Yeah, he had this we had this sense that this thought, before we get out of Kattegat, we had this idea or this perception that Hvitserk was kind of on this journey of restoration of his sanity. Now he's being restored, but I don't know if his sanity is being restored. He sounded kind of maniacal.
Yeah, extremely maniacal. And I don't know what to do with him.
Yeah.
Like, at one point, it was like, I felt sorry for you because you were suffering and your wife died. Then you had this whole spill, and now that Ivar is here in front of you and you now want to be one with him, I'm just like, I can't help you no more. Like, there's no hope.
Or, I mean, maybe he could be playing the long game, but we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, we will.
All right. All right, so with that said, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to move on to our closing segments. And we just have a little bit of news, and we're going to read your comments from last week. Now, I just now had discovered this on Looper, but you had discovered this before. The reason they had finally brought the show to an end wasn't because, you know, they had finally told the story of Norway and Ragnar's family, but it turns out to be something else. I don't know if you'd like to lay that on us.
Yeah, you know, the reason, like you shared, I saw it last time and I kind of just ignored it because it felt more of a blog than actual like news-worthy information, but ratings are ratings, and
right.
They have reported that the ratings on Vikings is the reason why the show is coming to the end. Since Ragnar's death, the ratings have decreased significantly, and the show just isn't getting as much attraction. They even compared the show to Game of Thrones, which really broke my heart because this show is way better than Game of Thrones.
You think so? Okay.
I know.
Definitely better than the last season of Game of Thrones. I agree with that.
I'm going to get a lot of backlash on that. But I officially can say I've seen the seasons all the way through, and Vikings, in my humble opinion, has way more action, way more kills, way more drama.
Okay.
And I'm here for it, and I'm just so sad that, like this article reported, the ratings went down since Ragnar left. Ragnar was the center and the heart of this show,
right.
And since he's gone, people thought that everyone was going to jump on to the sons of Ragnar and
right.
it was going to be all about them. But unfortunately, the numbers don't show that.
So apparently, yeah, the numbers aren't there, but hopefully they'll be for the spinoff in the Netflix series, right?
Yes.
Hopefully we'll see. Fingers crossed.
Maybe.
All right, with that said, I also want to read your comments. I haven't been keeping up on your comments as much, and I apologize, but I want to definitely go out and give some shout outs and talk about the people who left comments. So for last week, Valhalla Can Wait, we have Ty Taylor. Someone owes Ivar a favor. Don't forget he helped someone escape. So he's just alluding to Prince Dior,
yeah.
and we know that's going to come back around full circle. Stephanie says, in real history, King Harald united Norway and Bjorn Ironside became the king of Sweden. Yeah, we talked about that. So it's hopefully he won't lose Kattegat. That's what I take from all that. I just don't want him to lose Kattegat if he keeps his kingship. How did Oleg know about the son of Ivar? We were talking about this before. I just think he's not a prophet. He's just a great researcher. I mean, I don't know. How else would he know?
Yeah, you know, that's just like how he's sending scouts now to Kattegat and everywhere else. I kind of just feel like, yeah, he's a great researcher. He knows how to get what he wants, and he obviously has the resources for it. We saw that with his army. This is the first time that we're really seeing his true hand of power by us seeing this massive army that's out there. So if he's had this massive army that whole time, I think one can assume that he's also been able to have scouts and raiders and, you know, people traveling to figure out information.
So yeah, he's always been a good collector of information overseas. All right. And so Black Panther says he's just alluding to the fact that how crafty Ivar is, and he's more of a strategist than Oleg, and that perhaps even Igor is like maybe the son he never had, Prince Igor. True. Interesting thought. Okay. And okay, I'm going to read one more from Black Panther. In all honesty, Bjorn, but in a way, his brother, out of the rest of the Avenged, their mother. Oh, basically, he's referring to how the prophecy. We know that Hvitserk ended up killing Lagertha, who killed his mom. And to an extent, I think I'm kind of like paraphrasing what Black Panther saying because we're not out of time. But basically that Bjorn should have perhaps seen this coming. I don't know if he would have saw it coming, but I guess it's definitely something that he couldn't just dismiss at the end.
Right. I think, you know, even as the viewer, I think we all put our guards down a little bit just because they were in a different space, and no one would have ever expected Hvitserk to be the one that was going to end up killing Lagertha. Like, so with that in mind, we knew that Ivar was way away, or at least not a threat anymore. So it was the timing of all of it, and it was just thinking that we kind of overcame it, and now here comes someone out of the blue that's filling the prophecy.
Right. And with that said, we have one last comment, and I think you agree with this. Her name is Veronica, and she says, I have a feeling that Gunhill has a plan. I don't believe that she is just cool with it. And the moments she shared with Lagertha and the commentary with Bjorn, gives her the fence. Okay, kind of like they said, there's more going on. She sees the big picture, which is what you were alluding to.
Yeah, she's a strategist too. And it's interesting to watch her strategize simply because this character shows that women can put their feelings aside. Right. Point blank, period. So watching her, she's thinking on the long game. And I think we kind of get a little bit of that with her conversation with Ingrid too.
All right.
Hey, I know you guys are about to move on. I don't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to see if I could add a few more comments real quick.
Go for it.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the live chat. First of all, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Iyali May.
Hey.
It looks like there's someone from Ethiopia.
Wow.
I don't recognize the name, but
hello.
They said yes. And then this individual, Alley Cat Diva, she brought up a comment that I would like to pose to you both. Do you think that Hvitserk went with Ivar to kill him on this episode?
That's getting into our predictions.
Yes.
Yes.
Your AfterBuzz TV.
Get it.
Predictions. Okay, we were having that interesting discussion.
Yes.
And motives. We know that Hvitserk kind of half crazy, but kind of like found a new purpose. We were talking about these people who the people who are basically lying and the dishonesty and we can kind of get into all the people that were being dishonest in this episode. Personally, while I think Ivar, I think Hvitserk's kind of playing along. I think ultimately, I still think he wants to kill Ivar. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is my thing. I feel like you said before, they're both in this place where they kind of, the word would be need.
Right.
They both need each other.
Right. They're both separate from family.
They're both broken. They're nowhere near of considered the powerful extent of a Ragnar's son whatsoever. So now they kind of need each other to build
humbled,
up.
Right.
Yeah, and you even see. I do believe Ivar was telling him to, rest, get strong, and I believe that he's hoping that, Hvitserk's going to be his ally and help him bring some type of power and reign to the end. But yeah,
and very interesting how they pointed out it was actually Hvitserk who had actually, I think he was left to go with the other brothers, and maybe he was with Bjorn, but he jumped ship to go back to Ivar actually.
Right.
So it's kind of like the same thing again.
Yeah,
interesting.
The queen, she mentioned it. She said the same thing. She was like, we know that you jumped ship when you were younger. Then Ivar brings it back up and he says, why is it that you always come back to me? So it's just one of those things that they're connected.
Their destinies are tied.
Yes, and their destinies are tied.
Definitely. Okay, well, so speaking of let's talk about who else was lying in this episode.
Right.
Okay.
Well, you got to let them know, since we don't have a best kill.
Yeah, we don't have a best kill. We're just going to sneak this in. We're talking about the best lie. We were going back and forth.
Yeah, no one died.
No one died in this episode. So I I want you to tell me this because I'm already, for some reason, I'm already distracted by it. But I'm thinking about when, in my mind, when Oleg is telling them we're going to take over the Vikings territory, we're going to take over Norway, and we're going to get rid of all these pagans. And then you immediately, the camera focuses on what's going on with Ivar's face. Okay, was that what it was? So you immediately began to question his motives at that point.
Absolutely. I mean, we all saw Ivar's face. It was an epic moment. His face said, "Holy cow! Hold up, wait! I didn't sign up for that."
Yeah, he's still a Viking. He's still down for the Viking gods. He just wants to get back in power.
Gods.
Right. So was that the best lie? I'm sorry to cut you off, or did you?
I agree. That's the best lie.
Okay.
I think that's the best lie, and it's going to continue to form because I believe at this point in time, as Ivar has had to do, he has to play it cool. He has to play it cool. But the one thing that we do know about Ivar, and we've seen it all the way throughout the seasons, he doesn't like people playing with the gods. So I think we're about to see him come.
Don't mess with the guys. Yeah, that's the one thing. Ivar may do a lot of things, but the one thing he'll never do is become a Christian.
Exactly. He doesn't we learned that with Floki.
Yeah.
And we learned that, with Athelstan. We've seen him time and time again have this, hatred and negative vibe towards Christianity and Christians, and for him to be in this moment where he's gonna help take down the pagan gods. Yeah, no, he's not going to do that.
Okay. Last thing, I don't know if I have an interesting prediction, but was it Eric that posed that who brought up the fact when that it was actually King Harold had actually proposed Gunhild. Was it Eric who brought that up in front of everybody? Anyway, it was brought up. Maybe you guys can help us out, but it's something that
it was the wife, the new wife, Ingrid.
Yeah, she brought that up.
She was being petty at the table.
Oh, okay.
She literally, because Gunhild had proposed to Bjorn that he should listen to King Harold, and Ingrid was like, "Well, of course you would say that. You would say that because didn't he ask you to marry
basically
him?"
like she's still carrying the flame for him.
Exactly.
Which we don't think is true, but I don't know. Do you think there could be something to that, since she's been getting basically like taken for granted by Bjorn? Okay.
Absolutely not. She just had her back for Bjorn against the crowd and everything. Absolutely not. This is just a petty moment of where we're gonna see Bjorn be stuck in the middle of two ladies that he signed up for, and it's about to be a hot mess. And we're just that was a little sneak peek of the type of relationship that he's gonna have to deal with, because this girl Ingrid is power hungry and she wants to rise. She was a servant. She's trying to make a name for herself. She's now married to a demigod. So we're at this point where it's going to be women fighting for attention and power.
Okay. And well said. I think this is a good place to end it. We've gotten through all the categories. Thank you, everybody, for joining us once again for the after show for Vikings. Once again, I'd like to thank my lovely and talented co-host, Lauren.
Yes. Oh, my God. We love y'all so much. Thank you for leaving the comments. Please keep leaving comments. We will get to them. It's been a lot to juggle, but we will get to them. We will shout you out. We want to have conversation with you. As always, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at laurenbmosley, MOSLEY. Leave us comments. Let's chat.
Hey everybody, it's your boy Algie. You can find me on Instagram at Algie_Jamaica House Film. I also moderate the show for the new Pope, that HBO show. So come to AfterBuzz, I believe at 9 o'clock on Tuesdays. And thanks for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you guys next week.
All right.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.